Nikola Tesla was right. You can deliver energy wirelessly. This is the most guarded information above and beyond the nuclear program.
Do you believe what you saw in Antarctica is somehow connected to the quote-unquote UFO matter?
Yes, I do. Literally what I saw with my own two eyes is the ELF system, the extreme low frequency system that we were told was disabled, defunct, and off, is not. I was employed by Raytheon Polar Services, an arm of Raytheon proper. This is a weapons contractor for the United States government. People can't really imagine what these things can do. What people call Havana syndrome symptoms are basically the wounds of these modern weapons, which are the directed energy variety. Incidents are being recorded around the world. How much have they already accomplished against we, the people of this planet, by utilizing these systems against us?
What is the end game, do you think?
Control. To keep us basically enslaved under the boot of the wealthy elite.
These entities, they're not as powerful as you think they are. And as soon as you say, wait a second, we're not going to believe them, you find out that they're actually not that powerful. And if we can actually get together, we can create some changes.
The general population is becoming more aware. The veil is lifting. And I am very happy to see this happening because I am we the people for the people. I'm against our overseers.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is...
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Eric Hecker, the former Navy defense contractor turned research investigator and whistleblower. In 2010, you took a contract to work in Antarctica for the aerospace, defense, and electronics manufacturer Raytheon. Soon after, you suspected that your facility was being used as a testing ground for the development of directed energy weapon systems, which you say were responsible for the earthquake in Christchurch, New Zealand in 2011. You were also a key whistleblower for the Disclosure Project organized by Dr. Stephen Greer and testified under oath to Congress, describing certain technologies as, quote, beyond anything we currently believe exists on the planet. You have said that Antarctica has a rich history of nefarious activities involving the military-industrial complex and believe that the general public has no idea about the true nature of what is going on. Eric, welcome to London Real.
Thank you very much for having me, sir.
Thanks for joining us from Alaska. I appreciate that. And, you know, I kind of wanted to kick off with a quote I saw Dr. Stephen Greer post on his Twitter recently. And he said this, quote, the entity which controls the UFO matter has more power than any single government in the world or any single identified world leader. This cabal is a hybrid, quasi-government, quasi-privatized operation, which is international and functions outside the purview of any single agency or any single government, unquote. And Eric, I wanted to get your reaction to a statement like that. And I also want to know, do you believe what you saw in Antarctica is somehow connected to that quote unquote UFO matter?
Yes, I do. First and foremost, answering that second part, I believe it's absolutely connected, that this technology that we're dealing with, or technologies, I should say, is, as the front end of this stated, very guarded. It doesn't take much research into this topic to find out that folks have said things before, such as, you know, this is, at least for the United States, the most guarded information above and beyond the nuclear program, that this is way more important. And my experience in trying to get the truth to the masses has supported that as well. I find a lot of obstacles to getting the truth out in these disclosure circles. It appears, people give the appearance of wanting to get the truth out, but what I'm finding is that they're gatekeepers, which is the term common in these disclosure circles, is that they're pretending to be promoting the truth, trying to dig deeper, when in reality, they're actually obstacles to the truth. So again, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we had Dr. Greer on, I think 6 months or 9 months ago, and he's back in a couple of weeks. And, I had to kind of push myself to have him on because, I graduated from MIT in 93. I got a degree in mechanical engineering, and they taught us all these pure sciences. And they teach in such a way where there's not much room left for something that you might not be being taught, And so it probably makes even more doubt in my mind when I'm being told that these things are happening that defy the laws of physics, because I grew up in a place that was defined by the laws of physics. But, I'll be honest, Eric, when you look at some of the reports and some of the video and some of the testimonials of these highly qualified Navy pilots, these aren't, grandma having a couple gin and tonics on her porch, looking at something in the sky. These are, things that really seem to have data. You have to look a little deeper. And so that's why I'm trying to stay open to a lot of these possibilities. Because again, 150 years ago, people would have laughed if you had told them about nuclear fission or fusion. They would have laughed if you told them about Wi-Fi. And so I'm just trying to stay open-minded. I'm curious, you kind of got dropped into Antarctica and you started to see things which I think started to really open your mind and make you ask a bunch of questions. And I'm wondering if you could tell us first a little bit about that continent, because the more I look into it, the weirder and weirder it seems. And it seems like it's hiding in plain sight where no one really asks any questions. By definition, nobody really goes down there. And in a weird way, it seems like the perfect place to pull off some things. Can you tell us a little bit more about that continent and maybe the things we know and don't know about it?
Absolutely. I just want to preface it with, I'd like to get back to that physics position afterwards. But the continent of Antarctica is the highest, driest, and coldest place on the planet. It's the 5th largest continent in the world. And yes, it is extremely remote. So anything that you do there is, like you said, hidden in plain sight, because it's up to the people that have the deep pockets and massive logistical ability to accomplish basically whatever they want to accomplish there. Because, many people have said, you can't go to Antarctica. You're not allowed to go to Antarctica. There's really nothing stopping you from going to Antarctica except your wealth and logistics line. That's the obstacle, is Mother Nature herself. Can you overcome the forces of nature on the harshest continent on the planet? So the folks that can accomplish that can get away with murder.
Yeah, one of my mentors is named Dan Pena. He's famous for his castle in Scotland. He's a high-performance coach. And, he famously tells people, he said, look, I've been to both poles twice. He said, have you? He's like, I've never met anyone that has actually done that, because he has the resources. And then he goes on to tell stories about talking to the scientists and them showing them core samples where the Earth was warmer in the past. And he says, look, I've talked to these guys and you haven't. And I bring that up now because it seems like you're posing an issue that's real, is that most people can never get down there for logistical reasons. And so they'll never really be able to see what's going on.
Exactly. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, is that somebody has to speak up for the people that do know, for the people that have been negatively impacted by the systems that I'm disclosing to the public. It's very important, because what I've observed as my crew being negatively impacted, I'm now seeing in society around me.
And just real quickly to finish up on Antarctica, and then I want to find out what you saw down there. There's like an international treaty to kind of do certain things down there. I know Hitler famously went down there because he was looking for energy or different things like that. Who was actually there? And you also said it's the driest. That doesn't make sense to me, because all I see is a bunch of snow there. I'm just curious if you clarify that as well.
Absolutely. For clarification on the dryness, it is literally 0% humidity at the South Pole Station, which is very taxing on the body. Your skin gets like tissue paper. You wound easily. You heal poorly in a no oxygen environment.
Okay,
So
wow.
that's, one of the harsher aspects of the environment.
And what is the international treaty with Antarctica?
The international treaty is basically where all of the nations agree to, I guess, not stake a claim. And the idea is that they all afford the other nations the opportunity to investigate the facilities and make sure that nobody's militarizing anything. But the reality is no one's checking on each other. So it's more of a handshake deal to live and let live.
Okay. But even that treaty is a little odd because it always seems like they're always trying to grab sections of the North Pole and exploit it for oil. They don't seem to be that calm up there. But yeah, it's just kind of a very strange place.
It's extremely strange place.
Okay. So tell me, what did you see in specific nature to this, this directed energy system? Tell us what you saw down there.
Literally what I saw with my own two eyes is that the ELF system, the extreme low frequency system that we were told was disabled, defunct, and off, is not. During the course of a standard routine repair, I had to investigate an electrical circuit to isolate it so that I could swap out a piece of equipment. In that process, there was some confusion to the labeling of some of the circuit breakers in an electrical panel. And just quite simply, I had to go through my chain of command to get clarification as to what circuit was what so that I could safely perform my operation. In that process, it was, I guess you would say, divulged to me that the circuit going to the ELF system was wholly energized and that system was up and running. So that was very much an eye-opening moment for me, knowing that I was employed by Raytheon Polar Services, an arm of Raytheon proper. This is a weapons contractor for the United States government, and to basically catch them in such a lie on such a system that is multifaceted and, certainly can have, I guess you would say, positive uses for communications and things like that. Anybody who does a slight deep dive into what an ELF system can also do will understand that these are the modern weapons of war that, like stated earlier, people can't really imagine what these things can do. They don't want to know what they can do. They'd rather be ignorant because the level of nefarious activity that is going on right now is sinful.
Okay, can you give us a quick summary of what an ELF is or how it works? And you said that it had been shut down. So this is something that had been developing for some time and the public knew that such a weapon existed?
I don't know that the public really understands or appreciates the aspect of it being a weapon. I think they're more familiar with it being something top secret for submarine communications and things like that, which, gives plausible deniability to the activities down there. But now we're learning about things called Havana syndromes in some forums. The U.S. federal government has now changed that term to AHI, which is anomalous health incidents. And these are basically the wounds of these modern weapons, which are the directed energy variety. So the ELF system is on the list of directed energy weapons, and anomalous health incidents are being recorded around the world from people of every continent. So this is, where we need to look, because no longer is warfare conventional of old, when people had bullet holes and we could see the walking wounded. Now we don't see the bullet holes. We don't realize that there's weaponry being fired and that we, the people of this planet, are simply caught in the crossfire of the many factions that have these directed energy weapons in their possession and are actively using them.
I definitely want to dive into Havana syndrome. There was that recent movie that was funded by the Obamas called Leave the World Behind. And spoiler alert, but like the kid in that movie, he wakes up and his teeth are falling out. It's a really disturbing part of the movie. But they basically imply that's in my opinion, a directed energy weapon. And, later it's like, oh, he's going to be okay. But it's quite shocking. And I think some of those symptoms were what happened with some of the people in Havana. I definitely want to get to that because I think it's really interesting. But just to maybe finish with Antarctica, what did you end up concluding was down there, and how could something like that cause an earthquake? And then how could you conclude that?
Well, in addition to the ELF system, I did also see out of a facility called ARO, the Atmospheric Research Observatory. I did see a very suspicious green laser beam fire out of there. There's things to consider for that as yet another directed energy weapons platform present at the site. The earthquake generating device is referred to as the Ice Cube Neutrino Detector. And I mean, quite simply put, again, people can do the research. These weapons exist. The science is privy to everybody out there. And basically, it's easy to generate an earthquake if you can deliver energy from the source, like South Pole Station, to where you want the energy to discharge. Fault lines, as an example, they're already in distress. They're already trying to relieve pressure to discharge energy. That is what an earthquake is. So if we can just simply deliver, let's just say, the straw that breaks the camel's back, it's very easy to make an earthquake. This is, again, what people need to realize is, it's complex, I guess, insofar as building it, but the principles behind it are rather simple. People just don't realize that Nikola Tesla was right, and you can deliver energy wirelessly. So these are more or less just advancements in Tesla technology that the public has not been privy to utilizing, but the secret factions of many nations have been using them for decades.
And you mentioned Ice Cube Neutrino. I mean, there's studies down there, or purported studies that I'm aware of in Antarctica, where they do use those huge sheets of ice to detect neutrinos that come through the atmosphere, right? That only need these huge masses. Are they purporting that it's for one use when it's in fact for something else? Or are
Absolutely.
those? Okay. All right. So
yeah, that's exactly.
They're doing both, or they're not actually doing one, but it's a great cover for, say, a weapon system.
Precisely.
Okay. While we're on the subject, tell me a little bit about Raytheon, because we're hearing more and more conversations about this military industrial complex. Obviously, a famous speech that was made, I think was in the 50s, or when Truman was leaving office, I'm sure it was. But lately, more and more of my guests that are coming on, Eric, are talking about this. I had a guy on about 4 months ago, and he said, Brian, do you know the city with the most millionaires in it? And my first thought was, I don't know, maybe it's Silicon Valley, then maybe I heard Tehran has a lot of oil wealth, maybe it's Dubai. And it's Washington, D.C., because you have all the Beltway bandits that are lobbying and shoving defense systems down people's throats. And it's a pool of dirty money. Now, Eric Prince is just on Tucker Carlson, former Blackwater, and he's basically confirming the same thing. And we've seen these 60 billion and another 60 billion going to Ukraine. And I recently had, I think it was Jim Rickards on, that basically said, yeah, most of that is going to go right back into the reelection campaigns of, the members of Congress. I mean, they're shocking statements, but it feels like more and more people are waking up to the fact that that's what's going on here. Your thoughts? Do you believe that's what's going on? And is Raytheon one of the key members of that complex?
I absolutely agree that is precisely what's going on between, working at the South Pole Station, other research facilities, other, I guess you would say, heavily subsidized industries. The government absolutely has their hands in stuff, and it is that circle of money, like you mentioned, that they're all just kind of taking care of each other at the taxpayer's expense. And as far as Raytheon is concerned, I believe they are the devil incarnate in corporate form.
Are they kind of that number one defense contractor, or the few other names that kind of come to mind?
Lockheed Martin's up there. If you look at the size of these companies and what they generate, I guess officially that would be indicative of who's the largest devil. And I guess technically Lockheed Martin makes more money than Raytheon, but is, I guess, less destructive. Raytheon seems to be very involved with weaponry. Okay. Most folks don't pay attention to that. They have a Lowrance on their boat or a fish finder on their boat, and it says Raytheon on it. Well, I mean, technically, It's a targeting system. It targets fish. But the vast majority of Raytheon's money is generated from targeting human beings on our planet. They kill people for a living.
Yeah, and we have our equivalents here in the UK, like BAE Systems, et cetera. I think I think it was Robert Kiyosaki or Jim Rickards that had me on recently, and it talked about kind of the U.S. versus China. And of course, the U.S. narrative is that China is the oppressive one, and they're the one that watch their people and censor things and surveil, and a lot of that's true. But when they deal with other countries, they have their Belt and Road Initiative, which we look at suspiciously and say, yeah, but they're giving you these things, but you know what you're going to give them in return. But the response to from a lot of these countries is, yeah, but all you try to do is sell us weapons. That's like all the U.S. tries to do is shove weapons down our throat and also try to tell us how to run our countries. And it feels, I think it was Colonel Douglas McGregor that said, look, this is like a hangover from the 40s and 50s and 60s when the U.S. had that kind of juice and dominance. And he said it's really getting old for these countries, and it's playing out. And it's no longer an effective weapon. And these people are really going more towards build our infrastructure. Don't just give us a bunch of things where we can maybe kill some people or just pay you. Do you think that use of arms kind of as a way to control things, do you think that is maybe playing out when it comes to U.S. projecting dominance?
Absolutely. And I think it's been going on even longer than you just suggested. Prior to World War II, there was a gentleman by the name of Major General Smedley Butler, and he basically wrote a book about all the corruption in the military and the U.S. government. And he just said that, all wars are bankers' wars, and he was working for a racket, that he felt that he was, this illegal police force running around the planet. And he was a highly decorated military person. And he's, most people don't realize this, but Major General Smedley Butler blocked the only coup to ever occur in the United States. The military-industrial complex tried to go to him to get him to play along with the coup of the American government. And he played along for a little bit, just well enough to catch everybody in a net of who the guilty parties were. And then he turned on them and stopped the coup. And nothing happened to those parties, by the way. The coup was stopped, but nobody was prosecuted, which speaks volumes.
You said all wars are bankers' wars. That really hits home, Eric.
Really true.
We do a lot of work in the blockchain and crypto space. And the reason I bring it up is because when you look at an asset like Bitcoin that cannot be created and printed, it's a great way to view the US dollar. And a lot of people have gone on to say that all wars are fiat currency wars, because if we couldn't print massive amounts of dollars and hand them to Ukraine, what if we really actually had to balance the budget? Do you really think the American people would put up with saying, by the way, we're going to have to not build this bridge, and we're going to have to close this school, and we're going to have to do all these other things if we want to give money to Ukraine? People would be like, there's no way. But since we can print it at will, we seem to be able to do things that maybe we shouldn't do. And that's a great lens to look at these wars. And if you look at what's going on in Ukraine, I mean, if it wasn't so blatant, unfortunately, the Western media and in the UK and the US have one narrative on Ukraine, and that is they're winning. But if you really look at what's going on from experts in the field, you realize it's just one big money laundering operation. And the people stealing the money aren't the Ukrainian generals. They're the people in Washington as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
How did your stay end up in Antarctica? Did you leave on good terms? Did you kind of learn anything? Will you ever go back there?
I did leave on good terms. I was actually tapped after my initial 1-year stint as consideration for the winter site manager up against another gentleman that I had wintered with initially, and he wound up getting it. And the reason was that they have systemic problems in the program. And I guess in order to protect the innocent, I will just state that there are problems, which I believe caused by the directed energy weapon systems that the local crew are way too close to. And there seems to be systemic violence going on in the winter seasons that nobody wants to discuss off ice. So I was under consideration and being questioned with, how would I handle if I was in charge of the facility? What would I do to dampen the violence. And I was coming from, I guess you would say, a more old school, heavy-handed methodology. And I was being placed up against someone who was running from, I guess you would say, a more contemporary, liberal-minded, corporate way of doing things. And I wound up losing out to the other gentleman because I guess my techniques were considered a little bit more old-fashioned.
So I'm having flashbacks to the movie The Shining for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me if it was anything like that. And the picture I have in my mind is in that movie, you've got, Jack, who's stuck with his family in a hotel that's surrounded by snow with no contact with the outside world. And he kind of goes a little crazy, and there ain't much you can do about it because there's no calling for help. There's no police. There's no nothing.
Precisely.
What's it actually like down there? Because you spent 366 days straight, and you just talked about violence, which nobody thinks about. They just think it's a bunch of researchers, studying neutrinos. But what's it actually like down there? And what's the day to day? And is it a dangerous place to be?
It's extremely dangerous. It's the harshest continent on the planet. It is Mother Nature at her extreme. The South Pole Station in particular is a place on the planet where Mother Nature has decided everything should be dead. So for starters, you have to appreciate the environment wants to take you out. I would have to walk around from building to building every single day, doing my rounds, inspecting, making sure that the heat's on, the light's on. But to transit from one building to the other, I was facing the forces of Mother Nature unbeknownst to most people. And it was, it was in my reality, it was like a conversation. I would go outside into Mother Nature and kind of have to thumb my nose at her and say, "You're not going to get me today," because she was trying. It was palpable to me, to go out in a storm where, the temperatures are down at minus 90 degrees ambient and wind, and you have to gear up appropriately for the conditions. And, sometimes I get complacent and not necessarily put on the right gear for the conditions, and the conditions change and get more harsh while I'm out and about. And all of a sudden that conversation between Mother Nature and I proceeds to ensue. And, it's rough as far as the environment, Mother Nature wise. As far as the population, the building, the society, I guess you would say, during the winter, for our time period, we were completely cut off from the world, short of some intermittent satellite passes where we could, fire off an email or something like that. So for my winter season, the crew of 49, we became kind of a tight-knit family. But as you clarified before, there is no police force. Nobody's coming to help. So whatever somebody puts their mind to there, they have great liberty to exercise their actions. And if left unchecked, seemingly things can get very terrible from season to season. And I would just state that, there have been massive acts of violence, sexual assault, all kinds of things that, in the regular world can be dealt with, policies, procedures, factions that we have assigned to those things. But, when you take 49 people that are just there to work, they're just there to do a job. If somebody decides to break social norms, what do you do? If some guy just walked into your studio right now and started hitting you in the head, what do you do?
Yeah, that's kind of easy in this world. But if we're in the middle of nowhere,
right?
Then
if there's no police to call,
yeah, and then you got to be. And then after it happens, however you settle it, you're going to still share space with the same person for 3 more months. Like that gets really interesting.
Yeah, unfortunately, there are times where folks at the facilities, they realize might makes right. It is a microcosm of society, and just like in society, things can go wrong and people can take advantage of circumstances. And it seems to be, like I said earlier, it's an ongoing systemic problem in the United States Antarctic program that is unresolved.
Okay, now let's take that and go into this Havana syndrome, because you have said that some of these directed energy weapon systems have led to some very strange behavior, some very strange physical ailments. And you're saying that we saw them obviously in Havana. Maybe you can give a little background on that. But you said you saw them actually also exacerbating behavior down in Antarctica. Let's talk about what these things are. I don't think a lot of people know about them. I think that's what was being implied in that Netflix movie. Did you see that, Leave the World Behind?
I did actually see that, and I would agree that they, for a brief moment, there was the audible sound that they had fired up in the movie, and I believe that was alluding to a directed energy weapons attack, that everybody kind of was hindered by the audio capacity coming around them.
And was any of those symptoms accurate or possible? It was really interesting because
I believe they're accurate and possible. Absolutely.
Because the kid was losing his teeth. Obviously, everybody was stressed and incapacitated by the signals and the sounds or whatever they're being hit with. But it was scary. And the funny thing about that weapon system, and I'm sure you'll go into this more, Eric, is that there's nobody to point the finger at. And in a weird way, it also makes it worse. It is like more frustrating. And then I think the whole movie was you start to suspect it is coming from the inside of your organization, which maybe it was in that case. So tell us a little bit more about these weapons and maybe even the Havana syndrome as well.
You got it. I think first and foremost, in reference to that movie, one of the things that was off, right, was they misled the general population by alluding to the sound that was heard audibly. Now remove that sound so that it's even more plausible deniability. If you don't even hear a sound, but you're getting this impact, where's the attack coming from? So they do not need to give you an audible sound to give you the negative impact of a directed energy weapon. So that was a bit misleading. And what people should be very scared of is that these systems are designed for pure invisibility while still reaping the benefit of what they intended. As an example, when you had mentioned, that I was privy to witnessing this, my winter site manager, who I dealt with religiously in my hiring process, who spoke to me very clearly. This was one of the people in my hiring process who was tasked with explaining to me the severity of the role that I was taking on, in as so far as we will not be medically evac'd. It is not possible. So you have to sign up knowing that if something goes wrong during that winter season, you're in the hands of your crew and that's it. There is no way out. But with that being said, this highest ranking person at the facility towards the tail end of our winter season was what I believe negatively impacted by the proximity to the directed energy weapons platforms that we were functionally operating. And she fell to what people can call either Havana syndrome symptoms or what they're now calling anomalous health incidents. But she was under the impression that she had a stroke. And she herself started demanding medical evacuation from a facility that she should know better. But I believe that, like a wounded animal, she was just reacting. She was scared. She was hurt. She was changed. She understood that she was in danger. But again, it's an invisible weapon. So she didn't know where this attack was coming from. And I believe that she was attempting to identify her problem to the best of her ability. She, lined it up and believed, I must have had a stroke. But long story short, when she got off of the ice, I believe it was Johns Hopkins University that she went to be checked out. And the long and short of that was that they said she absolutely did not have a stroke. So I do believe that something happened to her and she felt the effects and she was scared and she was just trying to do her best to defend herself against an attack.
Can you tell us what happened in Havana? Because a lot of people don't know the background. Do you have those details you can kind of share? And then what we later thought it might be?
I'm not that familiar with the specifics. The only thing that I do know is that they have reduced it down to a microwave weapon attack. That much they do know.
I think it was the U.S. Embassy in Havana. As I remember, I thought a lot of the the people that worked there were reporting a lot of these strange headaches and these other symptoms, and no one could really explain it. But later, they were pretty conclusive that it really aligned with one of these like microwave attacks or something like that.
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Is they do know that the agents of the U.S. that were in that facility were negatively impacted by some sort of a microwave energy beam. That much we know, but they don't know from whom, and everybody seems to be in denial of, that this is going on widespread. Just this past May 8th, in the United States, they had over in Washington, D.C., was the House Homeland Security meeting, where they had witness testimony provided from a fistful of gentlemen from about the world. And the long and short of this most recent discussion was the witnesses were bringing forth their testimony stating that these directed energy weapons platforms have been in use by many factions since the very least the early 1980s. So it is starting to come to light that this stuff is legit. It's just, as they stated in this testimony, that all of the factions, which is many, that have these technologies in hand are not communicating with each other, and they're already operating similarly to the South Pole, where you have primary missions presented, but then second and tertiary activities going on. Nobody wants to admit what they're doing behind closed doors.
You mentioned earlier that you wanted to get back to the physics of it, and I'm curious what you wanted to say there. And I kind of next want to ask you a little bit about the Disclosure Project and what you think is actually going on that we're not being told when it comes to that quote unquote UFO matter. But what did you want to chime in on when I kind of was talking about maybe it wasn't the physics that I was taught?
Almost precisely that. And with all due respect to you as a person and everybody else in the physics industry, your whole entire job is to take what you know and replace it with something new. That's what physicists do. The only value of a physicist is they can tell you what they just saw, and then they hypothesize and change their mind when they see something different. That's the job. Physics, as it was educated to you, is wrong. We know that already, or we wouldn't be looking for more stuff. Physics, as presented, does not come near answering all of the questions that still remain. Everything we know right now, we know is wrong, or we wouldn't be looking deeper. The standard model of physics is a farce. It does not explain everything in the cosmos as much as we would like it to.
So I sense,
and that's the current state of reality. And this is the stuff that I was discussing with the scientists at South Pole Station. And they I said to them, I can drive trucks through the holes in your stories about how you're telling me things work. Why are you teaching this to people? And they said, we don't have anything else to teach them. This is just the state of the union. We know everything we know is wrong, which is why we're looking for more answers.
So I sense frustration with the scientific community that refuses to keep an open mind and refuses to continue to develop new science. That's what
the scientific community has more of an open wallet looking for more money than they do an open mind looking for more information. And that's the sad state of the union when it comes to knowledge on this planet. They're all fighting for the next grant, not the next truth. And they're more than happy to keep adding to the current state of the industry as long as they get their next grant.
Yeah, I appreciate that statement. I can't necessarily disagree with you. Same with the medical industry as well. Very, very similar situation. Disclosure Project, how are you involved, and how do you feel about the fact that we're now having congressional hearings where literally members of government are listening to people talk about, unidentified, I don't know what they're called right now, objects and, potential organic matter that's not from this earth, and to hear that being spoken in front of Congress? I mean, in a weird way, it's very surreal to see that happening. What are your thoughts on that? Where do you think this goes as well over the next 5-10 years?
I am very happy to see that this is starting to ramp up. The May 8th meeting that I witnessed, I can only say that it felt to me like they had taken my information. You had said at the intro that I spoke in front of Congress. That was close. I spoke in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee. So it felt to me when I watched the May 8th event that these folks were basically reading from what I had said. Everything that they said in that May 8th meeting at the House Homeland Security Committee was what I had already said in the Senate Intelligence Committee, with the only discrepancy, which was frustrating, was they clarified, they stated that they had reports of victims from every continent except for Antarctica, which is obviously not true because I personally went to Washington, D.C. and testified in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee saying we have a problem in Antarctica. So that right there thumbs its nose at this conversation and proves to the people watching this show that they're being bamboozled.
But we've come a long way, is what you're saying.
We have.
We're actually having these conversations.
Correct. And I'm very happy to have witnessed that May 8th testimony because I feel it was a gigantic leap for the general population to start being aware that these systems have been in operation for many decades. We have to reevaluate the world around us, the social structure, and implement these things in our minds so that we can appreciate what's actually been going on. You know, what can these weapons do? How long have they been doing it? What does that mean to us? How long have they been intruding into our lives? And what effect have they been having on us? It's not what effect will they have on us. It's what effect how much have they already accomplished against we, the people of this planet, by utilizing these systems against us?
You know, Elon Musk has stated recently that he hasn't seen any evidence of UFOs or aliens. And he said, if anybody would see it, I would, with SpaceX and Starlink and all that. What do you make of that statement?
I think it's hilarious. I mean, what's in it for him to be honest with us?
So he's lying.
Of course.
Okay. He would have seen things
Of
up
course.
there.
He has too much access, too much wealth. He's in the big boys club. He knows what's going on. He wouldn't be doing what he was doing if he wasn't interested, and he would have an interest for a reason. Like back to physics and science. His whole spiel is a joke. I mean, really? Cutting edge technology now is rocket ships? Are you kidding me? What a waste of money. What a cover story that is. What's he really doing? What's he hiding? I don't believe anything. I mean, he's not the person presented. He's a rich kid that bought big rich kid toys. He's not some amazing engineer. He's not inventing anything. He didn't really make these companies per se. He's a different angle of a military industrial contractor. What is he really up to? Because we already know that rocketry is pretty freaking antiquated. I mean, why is he not dealing in anti-gravity or something more special?
And so what is the end game, do you think, of the people that control this technology or these UFOs or these aliens? What is the end game for them?
Control.
Okay.
Control of the general population of this planet to keep us basically enslaved under the boot of the wealthy elite. If there's anything that history has taught us, if, you know, people say if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. Well, here's the recycling of history in a nutshell. The rich will step on the throats of the poor until the poor rise up and kill them. That is basically what we've seen historically happen time and time again. Good people, the average people, the majority of people on this planet are working, taking care of their families, taking care of their children. It's this wealthy elite group that's not the average mortgage payer that has more time on their hands because they have billions of dollars to use discretionally. And they sit around and they plot and they scheme and they conspire. And
yet a lot of
control.
And yet, thanks to kind of the internet, there's a lot of information coming out anyways, regardless.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. What's the Stargate program? And can you tell us maybe what that is and some other pieces of technology like bone to brain and ways that maybe thoughts can be planted in heads. Can you just give me a little bit of a breakdown on that? Because you seem to be quite an expert.
You got it. The Stargate program was in the mid-70s into the 80s. It worked with remote viewers. This is a reality that we also have to deal with, which defies physics as we're presented, that there is the ability.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.
So Jim Rickards has just recorded a video that's not available to anyone in the public, and he's going to be talking about how this upcoming recession is going to be fast, it's going to be bloody, it's going to be nasty. But at the same time, he's going to show you how you can position yourself to profit from all of this chaos. Now, we've made this video only available to our viewers. Go to londonreal.tv/Jim. Watch that immediately. I can't say enough good things about Jim Rickards. He understands the global economic system better than any guest I've ever had on London Real. His predictions are almost uncannily true, and you can learn how to profit from his vision, from his expertise, and his understanding of economics. So go to londonreal.tv/Jim or click the link below. It's an excellent, excellent look on what's going to happen in the future and how you can position yourself to profit from that. Jim is one of the best in the business, one of my favorite guests on London Real, and he's very, very good at predicting the future and showing us all to profit from it. So click the link, and I hope you enjoy. Hey, do you want to profit from crypto? Then join my DeFi Academy. The Crypto DeFi Academy will help you create generational wealth. But don't take my word for it. Listen to my students.
When I first got into crypto, I remember thinking to myself, I need to learn more. Brian Rose, learning crypto, learning DeFi, gotta do it.
I am so grateful that I jumped in and did this. I had to break through some limiting beliefs that I can do this, that I can afford this, that I can be in this.
It challenges the things that are deeply rooted within us.
Joining DeFi Academy has been one of the best decisions I have made on my blockchain journey.
This course was a life changer, a game changer, a huge eye-opener, coming from knowing practically nothing at the speed of the learning over 4 weeks was just fantastic.
The information you provided in this class was invaluable.
I feel far more confident in my next steps.
You took complex concepts and made them easier to understand.
What's different than so many other ones is it just doesn't tell you what to do. It actually makes you do it.
This is for people who are serious about becoming traders. This is the way it should be done.
I realized from this learning experience again that it is not about what you learn, but about who you learn it from.
The energy was insane. I've never experienced such incredible energy on a live call. Brian Rose, you are a legend, my friend.
It's the only thing in the market where you can get all information and learn everything what you need to know.
Everything is so clear and so well done, and I'm just forever grateful for this program.
It made me feel so much more confident about crypto than I did before.
I did not anticipate how passionate I was going to become about it.
This course has been like a big learning experience for me, not just in the crypto space, but just an overall balance of life.
What I've learned is, how to take ownership, of my life in a way that I really hadn't before.
Yeah, you can't put a price on that, really.
I would recommend it to anybody, top notch.
Excellence does not come cheap. So if you want excellence, you gotta pay for it, but it's so worth it.
Pull the trigger. That's what this course is about.
You're not going to regret it, really. It's amazing.
Thank you, Brian and team.
So what are you waiting for? Crypto is happening now. Click the link below, submit your application, and let me mentor you on how to create generational wealth and build the decentralized financial infrastructure of the future.